Hi there. Welcome to a new episode of Branding with Friends, the show where branding meets key small business topics. Here, you're going to learn tips from the experts on everything from authentic marketing to social media to SEO. We focus on what you can do right now to use these topics and the power of branding to attract your ideal clients. I'm your host, branding expert Annie Franceschi of Greatest Story Creative. I help small business owners tell their story and show their value through clear marketing messaging and consistent branding. I'm also a former Disney storyteller, a professional speaker, and the author of the best-selling book, Permission to Try. And today I am so excited to introduce you to one of my new friends in the business world. If you have been wondering about accounting, taxes, getting your business finances in order, you are really going to dig today's episode. My guest today is the incredible Erin Armstrong. Erin is a business coach and virtual CFO, that's Chief Financial Officer, who helps small business owners make empowered financial decisions, grow their income, and create a healthy business that will truly sustain the work and life they want to lead. Erin's unique approach incorporates the nuts and bolts of business finances, like accounting practices, tax strategy, profitability, budgeting, and cash flow, with emotional and mental work, such as identifying and confronting fears around money and control. Super excited to talk about that today. With this holistic approach, Erin's clients are able to confidently move forward in a proactive, free, and empowered way. Erin's worked with hundreds of business owners across the country in dozens of industries since 2011. She's also led workshops in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Austin, and other major U.S. cities. Erin, I am so glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining me at Branding with Friends.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Erin is really here to talk to you guys about accounting and so much more. So we're really glad to have her today on Branding with Friends. We're going to share 3 tips on what you can do to follow some accounting best practices and really some money best practices for your business. As you know, if maybe this is the first time you're watching Branding with Friends or listening to it, wait till the end because we are going to save that 3rd tip for the very end of the episode to make sure that you get all of the great value from today. So Erin, without further ado, we are talking about your wheelhouse, or maybe one of your wheelhouses, which is accounting. Tell us a little bit of sort of how you fell into this field, got into this world of taxes and profitability and all of that good stuff.
Well, I'm going to condense it down because it's a long story, but the gist of it was I was not in this industry. I didn't go to school to be an accountant originally. I was actually, like you, I worked in the Hollywood world and you know, I just ran into a lot of issues for myself. I was oftentimes working as an independent contractor and which is really a small business owner, right? And I just got frustrated over several different situations where I had questions about taxes I felt like would be really straightforward. And for some reason they weren't, even asking professionals, right? Or, you know, and then I combined that. I think what happened is I also grew up in a house that really had, I don't know that generally in America we grow up in healthy money households, but it was a kind of an abusive financial household, but you only know what you know, right? And so as I was kind of grappling with all this stuff, I started still just intending to do what I was doing at the time, which I had my hand in a few different businesses in that world. And I just started reading like the tax code and I was like, okay, I'll just figure it out, which is ridiculous now that I think about it, you know?
Yeah.
Some
light reading. Light reading.
So I couldn't have imagined that. But what was really interesting is it was something obviously that I didn't find completely boring. But what I found was that taxes specifically, that it really was different than what I thought and different than like the conversational wisdom, which is if you work for yourself, all your money is going to be taken in taxes. And, you know, just really, I think we have a lot of negative things that just float around in space. And what I found that at least in the US, if you're a business owner or an independent contractor, whatever you want to call yourself, that really the code is set up to support you. And that just kind of led me down this really weird, windy journey, right? Of earning certifications and starting to shift. Really, I just started to shift my business way before 2011. And then just realizing that I felt like this was kind of a calling and it was a gradual shift. So that's a long-winded story, but that's kind of how I got here.
Well, we're glad that you're here. And this is such a big topic. I would say it's, you know, the connections to branding are less obvious, but I think in the sense that, you know, branding succeeds when you have a successful business, and you can't have a successful business if you are not paying attention to the financial element of yourself.
Right.
And one of the things that my dad has imparted to me, I think he learned it in a marketing book, is, great branding and marketing. If you don't have a great business, it just puts you out of business faster.
Yeah.
So you could hire the best branding person, maybe me, maybe somebody else in your role. But that's not going to fix problems with profitability and taxes. So they go hand in hand. You have to have a great brand and great marketing, but you also have to have a foundation on which to build upon.
Of course.
Business. So to go ahead and tell us, what do you think is the first thing we need to be focused on if we really want to make sure our business is financially fit?
Well, I think the overriding theme you're going to see today is going to be setting yourself up for success. But the first one would be to take yourself seriously from the get-go. And you're right, Annie. It's exactly hand in hand with branding, although maybe not so obviously to everyone. One of the first things when I start working with someone, whether they're a brand new business owner or someone who's really established. So right now I have a lot of clients that are like, make a few million a year. They always want to spend money on the shiny, beautiful branding, right? And I get it, because that's what we get to look at and interact with and engage with. And that's very needed, because that's how we let people know about what you offer and who you are. But it's really interesting because I always have to pull them back from that. I'm like, whoa, we'll get there. But we need to look at how profitable this stuff is, or we need to look at your systems, because if this marketing is successful like we want it to be, you have to have the foundation in place so that you can scale up. And so really on the backside, when it has to do with money, that's things as simple as like establishing some sort of bookkeeping system. And for a lot of people that's intimidating, but you have options. I would say commit with one and go with it. Like, if you think you can do it, go in and do QuickBooks. Or if you know it would be like pulling teeth, maybe that's your first thing that you outsource, right? Actually, I had a client years ago, and she went on to sell her company for several million. She started with like nothing, like most of us do that start in business. And she hired me even before she was making like for sure money, because she knew she wouldn't deal with the money, right? She knew she needed some accountability. And so that's kind of an extreme. Most people they're not going to do that right at the beginning.
Well, you kind of have to hire for where you get stuck.
Exactly.
Right? So whether that's branding or marketing or accounting or whatever it is, paying attention to really where you're stuck, because you're not going to move forward until you get unstuck. Right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, and one of the things to build kind of on the bookkeeping is, a lot of people say, well, I'll just figure out if I'm profitable, or I can skip that piece. But you kind of have to know like your numbers to know if you're being profitable or not.
Yes.
And also, in the beginning, we've got to like admit everyone doesn't really know what they're doing. So you kind of have to just jump in and figure it out.
Yeah.
But so allowing for a little bit of figuring out space.
Yeah.
But as soon as you like think, oh, maybe this is a thing, or yes, this is a thing, that's when you need to really start shifting things. So whether that's a bookkeeping system, whether that's looking at what is your actual profit, and that's, the kind of thing that people don't really want to look at. And I think just because maybe you have to look at the numbers, which is sometimes a little bit
intimidating.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But it's being willing to put the systems in place. And I would say even establishing goals, it's kind of surprising how many people either set a goal or don't set a goal, but then it doesn't like change as their business starts to grow. So maybe they hit that 50,000 so they can quit their day job, but then you need to come back and reevaluate, like, how could this business really sustain me like on a long-term level? So what kind of money or income would I need to be making for me to take home what I need to take home? And so it's just being willing to have those conversations and to look at that stuff and get the support you need. Cause there's so many flavors of that, I guess.
Yes.
But taking yourself seriously, cause otherwise it kind of turns into a train wreck. pretty quickly.
I think it's one of those things where at the beginning of my business, I've been in business for about 7 years, and I remember the beginning feeling very intimidated by all of this stuff. And actually, starting my business, I was afraid about the taxes thing. Like that was a big reason why I didn't want to start a business. I was like, oh, I'm so terrified. How do you do this? And so I remember one day just tracking in my head going, oh yeah, this person owes me this person. Like I was just kind of adding up. Like I didn't have it anywhere. And a couple of years ago, I set up just a really simple Excel sheet to track incoming revenue and where I was profitable. And like that, people underestimate. I really underestimated tracking that, because once I started tracking it, it really built my momentum, and I could tie my marketing activities to my revenue to see, oh, this is how many proposals are booking. This is the money that's coming in. This is what it was per last year. So like taking yourself seriously doesn't have to be such a like doom and gloom thing. It can actually be a huge opportunity for you.
Oh yeah. I think it can be very light filled, because like one of the most common things is when people start tracking, they're kind of surprised that they're doing a little bit to a lot better than they thought they were, which that's really reaffirming too, so
it's momentum. It's you can't do anything unless you have a really clear picture of what is going on. And you can't make strategic decisions without that visibility. So I love that as a tip. What's the next thing we need to do? I know we need to take our businesses seriously, but what else do we need to do?
I would say learn to embrace taxes. That's a hard one, right? I don't know what it is. I guess when you're an employee, you get those taxes taken out, and you trust that that's going to all work out in your favor at the end of the year, and it just feels easier, right? But when you're the business owner, and granted, there's all different ways you could shape it. So it's going to look a little different if you're a sole proprietor versus LLC versus S Corp versus a partnership. But the common thing they all have in place is that there are formulas you can use to calculate what you'll be owing. So you're not going to be just surprise. And I think the other thing is the tax code, at least here in the US, it's really set up in a way that supports businesses. And that's not something, like I said, I think I mentioned this, it's not something that you hear often. You hear like, oh man, like the IRS is taking everything I made and blah, blah, blah. I've never yet seen that to be true. I do understand if you haven't planned for it, it's not going to be fun to have a huge tax bill, right?
Right.
But I also know from working with hundreds of people and leading lots of workshops, the average business owner, a very high percentage of business owners don't take advantage of all the deductions and all the kind of the benefits they can get from their business. And so, there's not one tip within that, because there's so many things, but I would say being willing to engage with that. Now, you don't have to go read the tax code. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But you could work with someone, you could hire someone to do it for you, but just have them walk you through your tax return. There's all different ways. There's some books out now, which wasn't the case 10 years ago, that are written for non-accountants. But I think it's really helpful to, instead of being like, to just accept it if you can, and start to figure out, once you accept it, I think it's a lot easier to look at how the tax piece can actually help you. And then it kind of starts shifting it. Once you realize, well, even if I owe these taxes, I've gotten all this benefit over here, which I never could have gotten as an employee. So it's kind of a yin and a yang, I think, and just knowing it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but it's something that can be figured out. And I'll also say, when it comes to the tax piece, it's something that's like, it's not a one and you're done, well, in a way it is. You learn it, but then you get to apply it every single year. So it's not like you do it and then next year it's going to be just as time consuming or excruciatingly painful, or however you might feel about it. It's like, okay, I implemented this piece of my business, and now I will continue to do that until I stop doing business, which, exponentially, that does save people tens of thousands of dollars one year, $10,000. I mean, it adds up over time.
It does. I think it's really the underlying message here is knowledge equals power. the more knowledge you have about how you're doing financially, that how you can take tax deductions. This is one of those things that like I told you, like it's something that almost stopped me from starting a business in the first place. My real fear. I love that your business really helps address that, because there is fear around money and taxes. You know, I don't want to go to jail for tax evasion, you know, I just want to do the right thing. And it's really hard because no one to sit there and read the tax code. So for me, I invested in someone. That was the biggest thing I needed to find in the first year of business. Was I found a partner. And I think a big eye opener for me was I didn't have to, it wasn't super expensive. It's not, it's a couple $100s a year for me to have a strategic tax partner who I meet with quarterly. I do all my own bookkeeping still, which I could outsource, right? But I don't make them do that. I just have him as a partner to go and look and say, here's how I'm doing. What should we change? What could I do strategically? Sometimes it is just really helpful to have another perspective, and sort of like what you were talking about, being a business owner, you don't even think about things like our healthcare has been astronomical for years, partially because my husband's in grad school and all this, we just had a baby. But we were looking at that, but because of how my business is structured, I'm able to have a health spending account, and that's money that's pre-tax dollars that lowers our adjusted gross income. So
for sure,
opportunities like that. I mean, that can be available to you if you work for others as well, if you have a high deductible plan. And we're not talking about insurance today, but it's an example of, yes, we're getting hit hard with big health bills. However, we're getting some help because I have a business and because I'm able to take a deduction for the HSA. So it's I wouldn't know that without asking questions of professionals. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a key piece that comes out from what you said to me is you were like proactive about it. Which I think helps too, because there's a little bit that might be able to be done, like if you wait till April filing time.
Sure.
But not a lot. I mean, mostly what would happen is they'd look at what has happened and then they'd be talking about the year ahead of you. So I think kind of reframing your mindset that tax time is not a season as it is when you're an employee, or, as we kind of think about it, but as a business owner, it probably should be at least a quarterly thing where you're kind of engaging with it on a small level, like on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, it forces me, honestly, to keep up with my bookkeeping. So I do my bookkeeping on a quarterly basis. So I'm never having to face an entire year's worth of receipts.
Right.
So again, it's sort of everything comes back to systems, I think. We've had enough people on the show. Make yourself a system and you'll do it consistently.
Yes.
But I've never heard anyone talk about the fact or how sort of you see it, that the tax code is meant to support business. So it's great that you have that mindset. It's encouraging for me. I don't always feel that way, but I love that you're sharing that. I know you have one more tip for us, but I know you also wanted to have a way for everybody to connect with you. So what is the best way that Branding with Friends listeners and watchers can learn more from Erin Armstrong?
Well, I'd love to connect with you. And so if you want to visit my website, which is www.erinarmstrong.com, and I don't have it in front of me. I think it's /email. Oh, thank you. I was like, but yeah, that's a great way to connect. I try to send out, like, I'm not a weekly emailer by any means, because not everyone wants to think about money all the time. But sometimes, like in some key, like when the pandemic hit, I sent out a lot in that period, which is, give people a lot of tips on how to get help with the government assistance. But for most of the time, I'm sending out like on a monthly basis or so, and just trying to give some insight, maybe some thoughtful things to think about, or let you know what's up. I'm also somewhat active on Instagram, but those would be the two places to connect. I've pulled back a little bit since the pandemic. So
sure, haven't we all, in different ways?
Yeah.
But wherever you're watching or listening to Branding with Friends, this is going to be in the notes. So make sure that you do connect with Erin, because if you are stuck because of finances, or you were afraid, like I used to be at the beginning, early in my business, she's going to be a great person to connect with and to get on her list and get some value from that. If part of where you're stuck is your branding, you can always speak with me. Hop on my calendar at greateststorycreative.com. Just look for the big red button that says free consultation. And I'm sure Erin will back me up on this, that branding is tax deductible. So it is a tax deduction if you do it. But I am so glad you're here. Thank you we've had these great tips so far. So taking our businesses seriously from the get-go, learning to embrace taxes. What is the third and final thing that you really want us to take away when we start to rethink how we consider accounting for our business?
Yeah, I would say beginning to align your financial goals with your life. And for some people, I think that's very like, of course, but I think for many people, numbers are an abstract thing. So I want to hit 100,000 because then it means I've made it, or I want to hit 50,000, because then I'm all for hitting those goals or making those goals, but it's really hard to boil down success, what success means for you and what you need to sustain the life you want to live. And so that goes back to everything we've already said, which is getting really clear on what it is, like what your systems are, what your profit is, because, the more clear you can get about what you would do with the money, even if you don't have it right now, I find that it's a lot easier for people to reach those goals. So if you know that you have to take home 120,000 because you're going to rock it with your business and you're going to put down a first house home payment, right? Like if that's your goal this year, you're going to be a lot more motivated to make the decisions, not just to get clients, but to be looking at the profit all the time. Like, have I hit my so because I'm trying to load up my bank account, right, so I can make my first payment on the house. Or a lot of times too, that comes into play with, on the converse side, I sometimes feel like people, you always have a few shades of how people react to this. But the other thing that's really common is that people will say, and I just lost my thought here. Isn't this funny? So I'm so flustered. I don't even know. Basically, it would be going back to what is it that you really want?
Right.
Because I also think what happens for a lot of people is that the amount they need to really flourish and to live the life they want is lower than maybe on surface level. They think it's far out, unreachable. I'll have to work years for it, which could be true. But if you really boil it down where you have some numbers, what would I need to live in that kind of house? What would I need to hire this kind of person in my business? What would I need to do X, Y, Z? It's a lot easier to match everything together, I think.
Yeah. And how many clients do I need to get, or how many clients would help me pay for this goal or whatever it is that I need?
Right.
I love the specificity of that. And I think it's so easy to lose sight of it. I hear a lot from people, I want to hit 6 figures. I want to net 6 figures. And it's like, but why? Like, I get that it's a success driver. Like it's a goal that I had for many, many years. And I am a 6-figure business now. I wasn't always. I could have done it in, about 3 years, but I take a month off every year. And it was only working, 10 and a half months a year. I would come really close to 6 figures, but I didn't want to give up that month. And so it took extra years to actually get to a legitimate 6-figure number. And like, that's a great thing. And I'm extremely proud of it, but it's also like, I align my goals with my life because yes, I could have reached that vanity number, but at what cost? Because I wasn't having the time with my family that I wanted, or the time to work on my book, or whatever it was that I wanted. Because I still do that. I finally did it on my term. But it's like, why was I going to let, $3,000, like,
change that you're not going to take that month off. Right.
And you have to be willing. What does success look like on your terms? And what is it, 6 figures is a wonderful thing, but what are you going to do with it? Like for me, this is a big financial year because we had a baby. I'm the sole breadwinner. My husband's in school. So we have to make, finances are like a huge focus. Next year, that won't necessarily be my biggest motivator or driver. And it's okay for it to fluctuate. But that's time is your money, and where are you spending it? Right.
And thank you so much for bringing that up. And I think that's where I kind of, who knows where my mind went.
I could feel it.
Sometimes it's like, well, it is. Cause I think there's always a temptation, and it is a yin and a yang, because there is a temptation to the 100,000 or beyond that. A lot of times people will say, I'll point this out. Look, if you increase this, more of those sales, then you would make that number that we're looking at. But a lot of times it's not worth it if it's not in alignment with you, because it's not sustainable. So I would say a lot of business owners that have been in a long time, that becomes an issue at some point. If they're doing something that they don't love, or they hate the management piece of it or whatever, then you're really stuck, because you feel like, I have to make this amount of money to sustain this lifestyle or this business or these employees that I've hired, and I hate it. So I would say never do anything that really, not even really, that in your heart of hearts that is not like life-giving to you. for the numbers, because it'll bite you. It might take a year, but it will bite you hard. And it's so much harder to get out of than just slowly increasing, if it needs to be a slow increase.
And it's unsustainable, to your point, right? Like if you don't, this is something I keep coming back to, whether it's branding or marketing or business. If you don't love what you're doing, it's work. Sometimes you don't want to get up and work, but if you truly hate it, you're not going to do it, or you're not going to do it well. And then we just know that about our own human psychology, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to rejigger. And if you don't know how to do that, then somebody like Erin, guys, is a person to talk to. I invested in a coach this summer because I got into a financial place with my business. And I went, okay, I feel like I've maximized everything. I can't see any more opportunity. And that's why it's great to hire a pro. I do that at least one professional every year to take another look at something where I've plateaued or gotten stuck, because they can see things you can't. I sat down with that coach for half a day. I'm still implementing all the stuff she told me.
That's awesome.
Dramatic. And I think it's going to help me double my current revenue.
Yeah.
And she looked at it like it was easy, like a cakewalk, and I just couldn't see. And when she said it, I went, oh yeah, that's brilliant. That's exactly what I should. So I think that's sort of the fourth and hidden lesson here, guys, is that when and if you get stuck in this place around finances or your money mindset, like ask for help, talk to people like Erin, talk to people. I do some business mentoring as well, but if this stuff gets you stuck, you still need to do it. So how do we get you unstuck and get you to help you do it in a way that feels good to you? And I love that that's your message, Erin, because money matters when it matters to you, right? When it really makes a difference. So
I love that. Money matters when it matters to you.
There you go.
I'm going to have to write that down.
No, I just trademarked it as I said it. So
okay, Annie.
We'll have to talk about it.
I'm going to attribute it to you.
I love it. Well, Erin, thank you so much again for joining us on Branding with Friends today.
Thank you for having me.
So many thanks to the amazing Erin Armstrong. You can reach her, of course, at erinarmstrong.com, and you can see that in the notes, of course, anywhere you're watching or listening to Branding with Friends. I hope you guys are going to tune in next time when we're going to tackle yet another topic. So many topics where branding meets business. Until then, I am Annie Franceschi with Greatest Story Creative. You can find all of our past episodes, branding resources, and a lot more, including time with me, at our website at greateststorycreative.com. Stay awesome. Thanks, guys.